Hello everyone, this is JB back at you with another review of The Dragon Prince. And this one is going to be a little bit longer as I will cover episodes 8 and 9 from season 2 of The Dragon Prince. And the main reason is because these two episodes are really together and after watching episode 8, it just seems like half of the storyline because there's so many plots happening. So I'm going to cover 8 and 9 as these are the season finales and cover them together. Episode 8 was called The Book of Destiny, and episode 9 was called Breath or Breathe. I can't quite remember. I think it was Breathe. And the way I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to actually go through by character instead of talking about it in chronological order, just because it jumped around a lot. So I'm going to start with Claudia and Soren. At the beginning of the 8th episode, Soren was paralyzed, and Claudia immediately tries to do a healing spell, but it doesn't work. And so they go to a hospital. Nurse tells Claudia that, he's paralyzed for life. Claudia actually then tells that to Soren, say like, yep, you're paralyzed. And he's like, I know I can't move. And he's actually relieved. He's relieved because, he now doesn't have to kill the princess. And he tells Claudia of the secret mission that he had, that his father wanted him to kill the princess. And, he's confused and that's not what he wanted to do. Then, there's a bit about him wanting to do poetry. Claudia kind of loses it. She gets kicked out. And then she meets up with Ezrin. And at this point now I'm going to cover Ezrin and I'll come back to Claudia. So Ezrin learns that his father has died from Corvus, which is the chain guy. They reintroduced his name. I don't know if they did. It might have did in the first season, but I had no idea what his name is. But Corvus is his name. He finds him and tells, basically it's like, I'm here to serve the king. And then Ezrin realizes that his father died, and, he thought to himself, like, man, like, I should have realized this earlier. He goes off alone. We kind of deal with that, and then Corvus realizes that he is missing, so he looks for him, but doesn't end up finding him. We later find out that Ezrin gets on I can't remember what the animal was, but gets on this animal and meets up with Claudia, and they share some personal things together. Here we learn about like Claudia and Soren's parents. Apparently her parents were divorced or separated when she was at a young age. She had to choose, but then her mother told her to go with her father, and that has been hard. And it's a touching scene, because they're sharing these deep things with each other. And then, Ezrin does tell Claudia that line of, when you grow up, sometimes there are changes you don't expect, and you have to face things you're not ready for. And so again, we see that line, it first happens, from King Harold to Callum, and then from Callum to Ezrin, and now Ezrin to Claudia. So you see how powerful, that line is there. And so then, Claudia realizes that Ezrin is good. He can talk to animals. So she asks Ezrin to ask the animals to help them get to some milk fruit, get to the milk fruit tree. And, they get to the milk fruit. Claudia tells Ezrin that he can leave and go back to his brother. And she had a secret motive. She wanted to get to milk fruit so she could get to the deer, because she knew the deer liked the milk fruit. And ultimately she uses this deer to use dark magic and a very powerful spell to heal her brother Soren, which he does. He can feel again. But this spell definitely looked like it took a toll on her. Like she was affected afterward. and she kind of has the white strip of part of her hair is now a white strip, uh, which reminds me of the one Rogue was her name, an X-Men character who kind of had the white strip after the events of the first X-Men movie. And there's the same thing here. So it seemed like it definitely took something out of her. Like it didn't just use the deer, like it took some life out of her as well. And I'm interested to see what that looks like in season 3. And so now we have the Viren and Erebos, or Aravos, however you want to say that. The star elf reveals his name, Erebos, and so at the beginning of episode 8, the council is looking for Viren. They can't find him because he's talking to Erebos. Erebos reveals his name, and immediately, Viren leaves and goes to look him up in the library. And he finds information, but as soon as he starts reading it, it like disappears and turns into like ash, or turns into darkness. And so he comes back real turned at Erebos, and it's like, what game are you playing here? Like, I can't find out who you are. And Erebos, ends up, whether you want to say manipulation or persuading, Viren, and it's like, what do you want? And Viren's like, oh, well, people don't listen to me. So he's like, okay, well, we're going to get them to listen. So next thing you know, he's doing dark magic on the top of the palace, and he sends, I'm assuming assassins, because the first word he said when he was doing his dark magic was like assassiny. So that's what it made me think of, sending assassins to the 4 kingdoms. This definitely took a toll on him. This made him look like the way he did in the first season before he took the life out of that butterfly thing. And he looks messed up. And so, matter of fact, he is going back, to the butterfly stash. I'm assuming to kind of, get his life back. But then Erebos is like, there are people outside to take you. And this scene, what happens here, I'm telling you, the Avatar references is going to happen. And I know these writers were literally like, you remember when Roku took over Aang to get out of the, Fire Temple? Like, this is legit the same thing. They I swear they wrote on their sheet, it was like Avatar, Roku, and Aang, because the same thing happens. He, lights flash in Erebos' eyes, and he essentially takes control over Viren in the same exact way that Avatar Roku took over Aang in season 1 of Avatar. And so then he starts doing all these sweet things. He's busting down doors. He's taking people out. He's disintegrating people, shattering people. Like, he is just working through the guards, and it's just, he's just taking people down. But then Erebos tells him to stop and to give himself up. And Viren's like, why would I do that? I have all the power. Like, why are we stopping? But he gives himself up because Erebos told him. And, Viren's like, you betrayed me. And Erebos is like, I will be with you. So there's definitely some endgame-ness there. And the bug earpiece thing goes in his ear. And a couple of things of note in this sequence: the bird, which a lot of people have theories there about the bird. But the bird definitely escapes out of the cage. And also he had a weapon. Like, his weapon seemed different, because he usually has his shorter staff. I don't know, maybe his staff extends, but his staff seemed extra long when he was fighting with the guard. So either his staff extends, or he got a new type of thing. I don't know what that was. I guess I have to go through once this season again to pay attention to that particularly, but just wanted to point that out. And then we have Caleb and Rayla. which is sort of the last group of people. So again, using dark magic took a toll on Colum. And he's like having these hallucinatory dreams, and I will not go through all of the events in the dream because obviously you could see the episode and it's very trippy. But the short version is he has to reject the dark magic. He gets in a storm, is drowning. And Rayla can tell like something's going on because he's like gasping for air, and she's getting desperate, like, come on, wake up. And then his mom appears, and she tells him to breathe. And at this moment, the sky symbol starts to brighten up on the cube, and I was getting excited, like, yes, he's about to get it. And then his mother says this quote, and I'm going to come back to this quote a little bit later, but she says, "To know something deeply, you must know it with your head, hand, and heart, mind, body, and spirit." And Caleb wakes up, right as Rayla is about to say, "What we presume, I love you, I care about you," or, something along those lines. And he wakes up, stops her in mid-sentence, and he says, "I have it." And, he tries to explain this of, him now having this ability to do it. And, he's like, now's the moment of truth, and he's able to do the Aspero spell. And he has made a connection with the Sky Primal. They reunite with Ezrin, and they end up, like, okay, we have to make the last little bit of the journey. But then Ezrin decides that, is like, well, if he's king now, or, he says, if I'm king now, then I need to go back and be a king to my kingdom. And so he leaves to go back to the kingdom, and Corvus goes with him. And then the Rayla and Callum and the two animal companions are making a last little trek into Zadia. They're at the border. They take the Moonstone path. And, because the runes start to light up on the stone, so they know which ones they have to go. The sun starts to come up, but then, like, through this connection between Ezrin and Zim, Ezrin teaches Zim how to fly, even though Ezrin is some distance away. Zim does fly. He, blocks the sun in sort of this, like, hole, and they are able to get to Zadia. And then we leave on the cliffhanger of the big dragon appearing, and Rayla's like, oh no, it's this, I forgot the name of the dragon. And then that's the episode, that's the cliffhanger. So, here are my thoughts, because that was a lot happened in that episode. What I first thought was, when I first saw the title card for episode 8, it said Book of Destiny. I was like, what? And like I said, I had already watched through the season once, and now I'm going back and giving my thoughts. But I was like, Book of Destiny, like, where is there a Book of Destiny? And I'm assuming that they drew the title from this quote that Colum is saying when he decides to reject the dark magic. And he says, destiny, the dark Calum says, destiny has been written. And then regular Calum said, no, destiny is a book you write yourself. So I think that's where that name came from. But if you were like me, I'm like, why did they name it that? And we're gonna talk about Dark Calum. Actually, we're gonna talk about that now. So who really is this Dark Calum? And we saw, like, this is Dark Calum and then regular Calum. And there's some different theories, I'm sure, that are out there, because obviously, even though it looked like him, it was clearly someone else. And right as the real Caleb is about to like touch the cube and accept the dark magic. It's like he sees the dark Caleb for what it actually was, that it was someone else, and it's like a couple, like 3 or 4 flickers of someone else. And so the question, that I think a lot of us are having is, who was that someone else? And here I have 2 theories of who that was. The first possibility is that this is like the culmination of dark magic in a person. And what I mean by this is like clearly, like you see this the most with Viren, where like he starts turning into something else. Like his face starts looking different when he can't, use those poor butterflies to regenerate himself. And so, as I was watching this with my wife the first time, she mentioned that she thought that it was that more of that manifestation of dark magic. The second option, or more of my thoughts, is that this is actually a form of Erebos. And there's arguments and counter arguments against that, of whether or not it was Erebos or not. And before we get to that any further, let's talk about who is Erebos. Who is Erebos? And so this is something that you might not catch unless you see the season multiple times, even though I know probably most of you guys did, because that's how we do it. We watch things a couple times. But this was on my second or maybe even third viewing. Erebos' name actually came up. It was episode 6. When Caleb is reading the letter that his father gave him. And the cube, he said, was Erebos' cube. And he also mentioned that he was the first master of all 6 primal sources. And so essentially he's the Avatar. Some people say he's the Dark Avatar. It's like, oh, he's the Avatar. The being able to control all 6 or have mastery of all 6 primal sources. And so that's who he is. And we saw a display of that when he was controlling Viren. He's doing all these runes and doing spell after spell. And it's clear that he has mastery of, the different primal sources. And so that is what it said. So the tricky thing about my theory about the Dark Caleb, the way that can be argued against, is like, well, so he was the first person to master all 6 primal sources, and he does dark magic, because Dark Caleb definitely had influenced by dark magic, or the personification of dark magic. And so it's like, does he know dark magic in addition to the 6 primal sources? I guess that's something that we will have to wait and learn later on. Although my counter argument to that, and I noticed this on this viewing of the last episode, is the cloak that Dark Caleb was wearing. That's something that I was like, oh, he's wearing a cloak. That's the distinguishing factor from Dark Caleb and regular Caleb. And I wondered, like, would that give us a sign? And when I saw Erebos again, the cloaks looked very similar. Now it could be, I didn't like necessarily like go back and compare the two, but just on that second viewing, it seemed like their cloaks were similar enough that I'm like, I wonder if it was the same person, or if Erebos is like there's someone above him. So there's definitely some questions on who the Dark Caleb was, and who Erebos is. And this leads to my next point: is there's gonna have to be an origins arc. A few episodes talking about the origins, because there's a lot of questions that, in order for us to understand the story now, we're going to need to know. Sort of like in Legend of Korra, the best 2 episodes, I think, in all of the Avatar franchise came from the worst season of Legend of Korra, and that was the 2 beginnings episodes, because it really like showed like the kind of mystic history of how the Avatar came to be, and everything else just made so much sense with having that knowledge. Even the ex machina that people claim with the lion turtle and Aang and taking his bending away. Although I have my opinion of that, should do a video on that sometime. But it's like that beginnings episode even like gave context to that. And so this show is gonna need that. Whether it's who is Erebos, why was he able to master the 6 primal sources? Who was the original person to do dark magic? Of course, we have that like person shown in the beginning of the series, and then like so there's gonna need to be some explanation there. There needs to be an origins arc, and I'm excited to see what it is. I know they're gonna give it to us because they these writers, one thing they have shown that they do a good job with backstories. So when they like backstories, flashbacks, like they really do a good job with that, and we've even seen that this season with the flashback that happened. So it's gonna happen, but that's gonna have to be a thing so that we can start to answer these questions. Another thought is I love that when Callum wakes up, he didn't know who Corvus was. Sometimes in shows, those little details kind of get left out. It's like he has never seen him before. And like in other lesser shows, it might be like, oh yeah, it's this guy. All right, he's gonna follow us. But the fact that he questioned like, who is this? Why is he here? Is he on our side? And that they had to catch Callum up was like, oh yeah, he's with us, this was the guy who was tracking me, blah blah blah. And I just like the fact that they had that conversation and like was catching him up while he was in this like weird sleep coma hallucination thing. Now I want to talk about Callum and when he says he has it, and when he tries to explain to Rayla, the arcanum that he is connected to. And I have seen, some reviews where, they say like, oh, he's speaking mumble jumble and he's not very clear. And, I've already said sort of my opinion on this earlier when the moon mage tried explaining this, and even when Rayla tried explaining this, is I actually like the fact that they can't really put it into words what they're experiencing. They're like, it's just this thing that is inside of them, and they understand it, but they can't explain it. And we go through that in life. Like, for example, I'm a musician, I'm a pianist, and one thing that I can do, very easily is play any song by listening to it once. And, when people have asked me like, oh, how can you, play a song so quickly after only listening to once? It's hard for me to explain. It's like, well, I just have it. I just know how to do it. And like, if I tried to explain it, it would sound like that mumble jumble. And I don't think that is necessarily like a criticism on the show and that the writers don't know how to explain it, because they do. They actually do explain it, and they do give us a good definition. And this happens when Callum's mother is talking to him in his dream, when she says, to know something deeply, you must know it with your head, your hand, and your heart. And she defines what head, hand, and heart means of mind, body, and spirit. So like knowing something with the combination of those things will get you that arcanum connection. And that is how he was able to connect, because those things were out of sync. So, his mind, had to deal with it. And he's always had the spirit, from last season. He's, when he can do those spells, he was like, man, I was meant to do this. Like that spirit was there, but his mind had to go through a little work this season with talking with the moon mage, talking with Rayla, like really trying to sort this out. And then the final like tink, as Rayla said, I think was the body experience, like physically doing the dark magic helped his body to really experience that in a different way. And so I think that syncage of the mind, body, and the spirit together is what allowed him to connect to the Sky Arcanum, and I'm fine with that, and I'm fine that he can't explain that because again, we don't want midi-chlorians. Like I said a couple episodes ago, we do not want midi-chlorians. So like this, just let's just accept that it's hard to explain. This is a thing. That's how this fantasy world works, and I am fine with that because as soon as they start saying, "Oh, there's this thing in your blood, midi-chlorians," and it helps you do magic, it's gonna give us all the bad feelings, as Rayla said from season 1. The next thing I want to point out, the line from Ezrin, he's saying this a second time, but this time to Caleb of when you grow up, you have to face things you're not ready for. And then he then decides that he needs to go back to his kingdom and that he can't run away from this problem. And I think that was really mature. That's really coming of a good leader. When you realize like, I may not be ready for this, but my kingdom needs me and I need to go back to my kingdom and lead my kingdom. And I thought that was just really mature for Ezrin. You see, sort of this arc of responsibility this season. There's been a lot of people talking like, oh, this is not really a season. The first 3 episodes are really part of last season, blah, blah, blah. And that there's some of that is true. I have my, sort of philosophies on that. But one clear arc that I see in this season is with Ezrin learning to take responsibilities. Because, his first responsibility really is with Zim and teaching him how to fly and, working through that. And then, realizing like, man, I need to teach my kingdom how to fly, essentially. Taking on that responsibility. And that is very mature of him. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing how he leads the kingdoms moving forward. The next point, and this is something small, but it's again something that I realized on my second viewing, when Viren is sending the assassins to the other kingdoms, I noticed that Dalbar is the first kingdom that he mentions that sends those assassins to, and then Doran is the last kingdom that he sends these assassins to. And I think there is some relevance to that. And like he even like they showed this very well. It's like they had the 4 like weapons on the ground, and he like skips over. Like he doesn't do them from left to right. He skips over and kind of picks and chooses. And I think there's some significance to this. So Dalbar, again, this was a quick line, is where Claudia's mother is from. She's originally from Dalbar, and she said that. And so I think that's why he sent that first one to Dalbar. I think that meant something. And then to Doran, which of course had the Doran queen, Anya, who was really the one to turn him down, and he saved the last one for that kingdom. And I think there's some significance to that. I don't think that was random. I don't think that was by chance. And the fact that they clearly showed him skipping over weapons shows that the first and last, like that was that, he meant that he was in his feelings. So I wanted to point it out to see if you noticed that as well. The ability for Ezrin to talk or communicate with Zim from far away. Now, some people might see this as another Dragon Ex Machina, like we had in the first season when Zin rips off Rayla's assassin bracing. But I don't think so. I think they did a good job of showing this kind of telepathic communication that Ezrin has developed with Zim. And one of the perfect examples of this was in episode 5 when Caleb is still deciding whether or not he wants to read the letter from his father, and like Bait is feeling lonely. You see a scene where everything that Ezrin does, Zim does. Like he's copying him move from move. And I think that was a way of the writer saying like, they have built a connection so deep that it's almost telepathic. Like they can communicate without even talking. So I'm completely fine that they had that connection at the end of the finale because that's been a stop that, there's been clues that he could do that throughout the season. And it just like how, Callum has connected to the Sky Arcanum, it seems that Ezran has connected to Zim in a way that they can communicate even when they're not in the same place. So it was really nice because Ezrin still got to teach Zim how to fly and to complete that journey, and that was a good, something to end on there. And so I think that's definitely plausible. The state of Claudia, that white strip in her hair, and then after she did that spell, she didn't look too good. She seemed okay a little bit after that when she was talking to Soren when they decided that they were going to head back with the piece of the dragon horn. But I'm interested to see where that goes next season. I don't think she's just going to be fine. I think some life was sucked out of her, and I wonder if she's going to start to feel the effects like her father is feeling, how he looks all different now. And I do think like there's a hierarchy, like there's levels of dark magic. Like when you do like a simple dark magic spell, that it doesn't have that much of effect on you. But when you do like a big, like something dealing with people's lives, that has a big effect on you. And like perfect example of this is like from the first season after Viren did whatever he did with King Harold. There's a lot of us who still think that he switched spirits with the bird. But whatever he did with those snakes in King Harold, he came back looking messed up and he needed to get those butterflies. Or even, this season when he's essentially assassinating people from the other four kingdoms, like that had to do something with lives, giving, up his life. Or with Claudia of, essentially putting, the part of the deer's life, back or into Soren so he could feel. And so it seems like when you do those big level spells with dealing with people's lives, that has an effect on you, probably because you're taking part of your own life. I'm interested to see how that works. And then the bird is skipping, escaping away. And there was even people last season, who thought that that was King Harold, that he is also in that bird. And there's a lot of people who believe that. And, and I kind of am inclined to believe that too. It's tricky. It's tricky because, like, on one hand, you want to say, yeah, he's in the bird. And if he is actually in the bird, then, like, we're all going to accept it. The one plot hole, though, is with the Moon Shadow Elves assassin bands. It's like, if they didn't actually kill the king. So it's like, how does that ritual work? Is it you just kill the king's body? Like, you thought you killed the king? So, like, it was the intention that mattered. So that's how the bandage comes off. Or, the bandage knows if the spirit of the king is dead, so therefore it comes off. And so the question I have is, so if, remember when Callum said that he was the prince, that he was Ezran, when he first met Rayla. So if she would have killed him, like, would that bandage come off? Because, like, her intentions were that she killed the prince, or does it know? So that's a question, and that will be answered a little bit once we know who is in this bird and what that bird is. But if it is King Harold, we all know that is going to be a sweet reunion with Ezran, especially knowing that he can talk to animals. Like, that's going to be a big thing moving forward, and I'm excited to see how that works. Lastly, in this long discussion video, talk about ships. Let's talk about ships. Who are we shipping together? Because it cannot be a good show or a good fantasy show without shipping some couples. And there's a couple, no pun intended, but there's a few that I am shipping and that I'm buying more than others. And we have the obvious one of Claudia and Callum, and that's because they had the date. They obviously have a romantic connection. They're obviously attracted to each other. Like that's a thing, and you can't ignore that, and that's a thing. However, there is this weird issue of, like, did she push it too far? Did she did she break Callum's trust? Is she starting to go down the slippery slope of being a dark mage? How does that impact their relationship moving forward? And that's going to be interesting to see. The other major ship, which I have boarded this ship. I have got on. I bought my ticket, and I'm on this ship, for a while, and that is the ship of Callum and Rayla. And I know some people, any review discussions that I've seen to this point, people said, "Oh, it happened too quickly." The fact that she, said that she was about to, that she loves him, that happened too quick, and so they're dismissing the possibility of that ship because, she was gonna say "I love you" and I came out of nowhere. And I am here for that ship. I have my reasons to support it. First of all, it's like, and I said this, with Aang and Katara, because I'm a big Katang fan. I will defend Katang to the end of day, and Zutara. I am against Zutara. I want nothing a part of Zutara. But I'm a Katang fan, so there's that. So you know my background, so you can judge me if you want, just because you think Zuko's hot, whatever. But I think there are enough evidences of them starting to develop feelings for each other. And first, and I kind of agreed with some of the other reviewers in the sense of, like, it seemed one way, that Rayla is developing feelings for Callum, but he doesn't necessarily have feelings for her back. And I'm going to argue that he might actually have feelings for her back. Like, that might be reciprocated. And I saw this on my second viewing. So here's my evidence to back up what I'm saying. So obviously you had the moment that I highlighted in episode 3 of, Rayla, touching him, he looking at her, and then looking at Ezrin, and then smiling. That moment just reminded me too much of Katara and Aang. It's not even a romantic moment, but sometimes it's like, romance doesn't have to be this, like, overly, well, I'm gonna get to that in a minute. I won't go there yet. My second evidence, or, my second point of, like, I think, this may be, a thing is when Rayla decides she's gonna protect the dragon and leave, and Caleb is upset he's drawing Rayla. And I don't think, like, you don't get upset and draw, someone you put in the friend zone. Like, you don't do that. If you friend zone someone or you don't like them and you're upset and you always go to drawing when you're upset, you don't draw someone you put in the friend zone. I'm not saying that he's like, he loves her more than he, is interested in Claudia, but there's definitely interest there. The fact that he was drawing her, the only other person that we've seen him draw, it was his mother, maybe his brother. He's only drawn people who he is cared about. And the fact that he was drawing her, especially when, she said, like, even if I don't come back, I think that's what got him upset, is that the fact that she might be gone and he was drawing her. I think that means something. I think that is evidence that at the very least there is a seed starting in him, and something about, that, later part of the trip, especially from the boat on, that they're starting to get a connection. And there's something there. And then, of course, the third thing that I would cite is when she's about to say either she loves him, she cares about him. It's clear that there's something there from her side. So I think it's something there for both of them sides, and it's okay. Like, people, it's okay for them to, like, just start liking each other. Like, obviously, when people have feelings for each other, it has to start somewhere. And, like, people say, oh, this happened too fast. Like, let them like each other. Let them go through their beginning stages. Like, they're just figuring out. They just realized yesterday that they like each other. Like, let them, do their thing. And now here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Okay, I will give the Claudia, Callum, and I don't know what the names would be. Claudium, Kalita. I don't know. I think for the Rayla and Callum, maybe let's see, Raylam. Okay, so that's my ship. I'm gonna call it Raylam, Team Raylam. But I don't know what Claudia and Calum is. But at least with that one, it's like they really did have a pure connection. Like their date was so like pure and innocent. And I would be okay if the series decided, and they probably did this on purpose to feel the fans out, like they did with Zuko and Katara, because Katara was originally gonna be with Zuko, but the writers changed it. So they might be doing that again, seeing how we feel, and then solidify. So I'll be okay. I won't be as upset, as I would if like Katara and Zuko got together. I would be like, no, I don't buy it. So at least I'm okay with it. At least it's not like Legend of Korra, where I just did not care at all about any of the ships. I did not care about Korra and Mako. I did not care about Korra and Bolin. I guess Korra and Asami was cute. I don't know. Like, I just had no desire for shipping in Legend of Korra because I was just so done with that love triangle. And hopefully they can have a love triangle, but I don't want it like that. Like, don't have Callum be a jerk and then turn both of them lesbian. Like let this happen organically. But here is my last point, and I'm rambling now, but I gotta support my reasonings for my ships. The reason why I support Callum and Rayla more than I support Callum and Claudia is because of this. I am not a big fan of showing that it is okay for someone to treat someone else poorly or to make bad decisions and still be rewarded with a relationship. And what I mean by that, it's like for Zuko is a little bit different, but Zuko has kind of some of this going on. It's like you don't get to be, this person who breaks trust and then, get the girl in the end or get the boy in the end. A good example of this is How I Met Your Mother. Spoilers for the ending of How I Met Your Mother, even though there's two endings. Like, I am not for Robin ending up with Ted for this reason. It's like, Robin is not a bad person, but Robin is a little bit more closer to Claudia for me. It's like, they're definitely a little bit more gray. And like Robin consistently hurt Ted. Robin consistently, broke Ted's trust. So therefore, like, no, she doesn't. Robin doesn't get Ted. After all that he went through, and she does no, she doesn't get that. That's her fault. She missed out on her chance, and to a lesser extent. That's how I feel about Claudia. It's like, she broke his trust, and as soon as she broke his trust, Rayla was right there to swoop in. So, that's how I feel about that ship. Definitely in long conversations just talking about ships. But I'd be interested to see what, hear and see the comments of what you guys think, what you're shipping, and what these names are. I'm going to go with Raylam for Rayla and Callum. But I'm sure a lot of people, and there's support there to do Claudia and Callum. My last ship that, there's absolutely no reason for this other than that they're the same age, and it's just the way the show is setting this up, I'll be here for it, is now King Ezrin and Queen Anya. Just because they're the same age, they're young leaders who is going to have to work through adults trying to manipulate them. Like, I can see those two being, at the very least, allies in the future seasons, and they're going to work together. And the fact that they spent so much time on Anya's character, I think, is an indication, like, we haven't seen the last of her. Hopefully she doesn't, if she gets killed, I'm going to be real mad. But, the fact that they spend so much time on her, I think she's going to play more of a role, and I am here for that, and I'm shipping that. There might be some people with Alice and Alice was the girl with the wolf dog Ava, and Ezrin, but that's to each their own. So those are my ships. So yeah, those are all of my thoughts of the Dragon Prince. This episode 8 and 9 from season 2, but there is a lot to discuss there. There's a lot of questions, which that is good. You know, some people are a little bit like, oh, this wasn't really a season, there wasn't really an arc, and like I'm okay with that. This is fantasy. Fantasy doesn't work the way that other conventional stories do. Like, I'm okay with her. Like, each season doesn't have to have an arc. I mean, look at Lord of the Rings. Look at the way Lord of the Rings, the first movie ended. The Fellowship of the Ring. It reminded me a lot of how this story is going. It's like this adventurer story, these people getting together, and it literally just ends, like, at a random point, and then the next movie literally just picks up at the next spot. And that, like, to me, that's how fantasy works. It's like, I think of a D&D, campaign. I've played a lot of D&D sessions where it's like, yeah, we're just in kind of this, and right before, the DM will say, like, oh, you come across a mountain, it's this big, huge dragon, and then, boom, that's the end of the session. Like, that's how D&D ends. And you're like, I want to play, I want to play the next session, so you can go to the next session and beat that baddie. And, like, I literally feel like this show reminds me of D&D, actually. And, like, that's how it ends. So I'm perfectly fine with where it ended. I thought, the season was good. I thought, it worked well with exploring some more things and revealing more of the story. We learned a little bit more about the world. The animation was a lot better this season. So yeah, there was a lot of good things I think that came out of the season, and obviously a lot of people are ready for season 3. We might have to wait 6 more months to get season 3, so that's sad. But, season 3 will come. But I like the fact that there's all these questions that are unanswered. And we want to know the answers to these questions. And to me, that's saying that we want more. If they just answered every single question and it was like, well, why are we even watching? Why should we watch, season 3? But there's a lot of unanswered questions between, Callum, will he master the other 5 problem sources? Rayla, what's going on with her? Claudia and Soren, how they're doing, Viren, Ezrin, like, there's so many questions, Erebos, there's a lot of questions there, so, thank you for, listening to my discussions, of the season. I definitely had an enjoyable time kind of, going through each episode and giving my thoughts. What are your thoughts on these last 2 episodes and your thoughts on the season as a whole? Who do you think Airful is? Do you think he can do dark magic? Do you think he's the dark avatar? What is your thought on, the characters not really being able to explain their connection to the Arcanum? And then who are you shipping? Are you team Raylam? Or are you team whatever you get? See, you gotta bring up your own name for that team. So who are you shipping as well? And you could just input the rest of your thoughts in the comment section below. Well, I will see you on the other side. Have a good day.